Mike Slater.
I think what they're looking from me is the same thing that they're looking from Speaker Boehner and Harry Reid and everybody else, and that is that we act like grown-ups.
President Obama was kind of gutless, cowardly, no spine, timid as usual. He didn't present a budget with any real cuts. We've had a minimum of $1.5 trillion every year he's been president, so that's nearly $5 trillion in Obama debt. And so the Republicans, somebody needed to be an adult.
There you have it. 1-800-760-KFMB. No, everyone's acting like children. Michael Tanner from the Cato Institute. What's up, Michael?
Excuse me. Good morning. Nice to be with you.
Best intro.
Mid-cough.
Best intro ever. Appreciate you being here. We got two sort of battles going on. Let's start with the government shutdown, if you want. Let me ask you this first question. Someone called in a couple days ago and asked this. Last year, there wasn't even a budget, right? So
that's correct. That's why we're having this fight now, is because a budget was never passed.
So why is it a big deal now? Do you know?
Well, they did pass a continuing resolution at the end of last year. They passed one in October and then one in December, which kept the government running until the beginning of March, and then they passed two continuing resolutions since then. The last one will expire on Friday. Mm-hmm. And after that, if they don't pass another one, then the government runs out of money.
Okay, so the last year, remember, there's a big controversy that the Democrats never passed a budget. So they passed a year-long continuing resolution?
It's 6 months, or 4 months, I believe it was.
Okay, and now we're just into these 2-week resolutions.
That's right. It's been getting smaller and smaller.
How did the fact that they didn't really pass a budget last year, how does that affect the lack of a budget this year?
Well, that's why we don't have a budget right now. Well, they've never actually passed a budget, and they won't pass a budget now. It'll be a continuing resolution until the end of the year. What we've been doing is having these stopgap measures to say we'll fund it for a couple of months until we negotiate something. They've decided now that they're tired of doing that.
This is ridiculous. So, what do we do with this lack of a budget here? I don't want to say whose fault is it, because I think they're all a bunch of bums. It's everyone's fault. But what do we do? How do we break this hold?
Well, eventually they will pass something for the rest of this year, and then we can start fighting over next year's budget, which we will undoubtedly not pass by the time it comes due in October 1st.
All right, let's talk about that, because that's the other big news going on now is Paul Ryan's giant budget here. And we hear a lot of numbers thrown out there. So 6.6 seems to be a number I'm hearing a lot. 6.6 trillion in cuts. What does that really mean?
Well, it shows just how bad our situation is, that he does cut somewhere between $6 and $7 trillion, depending on how you measure it, over the next 10 years. And yet he still adds $6 trillion to the national debt over that period of time.
Wait, what?
Yeah, he does not actually balance the budget. He cuts the budget by nearly $7 trillion in spending, and yet still will not have balanced the budget by the end of the decade. That shows just how bad our situation really is.
And I love how the Democrats and liberals are calling him the extremist. He's the one who's extreme for wanting to bring the budget back towards sanity. Yet they're not extreme for getting us into this situation.
Well, when you look at what he's proposing, it really is quite moderate. He's talking about rolling back domestic discretionary spending to 2008 levels. I mean,
Whoa!
People were not starving.
Whoa! 2008?
That's it. That's a big rollback on domestic discretionary spending.
Do you not remember those days of 2008, Michael? Those were just... Wow, those were awful.
The Great Depression.
That really was.
Nothing on that. That's
bread lines
starving in the streets. He wants overall to target federal spending to about 20% of GDP. Now, that would be higher than the 18% of GDP under Bill Clinton. Another time period when people were clearly dying in the streets.
Now, what page of Paul Ryan's budget proposal does it say that old people have to eat dog food?
You know, I missed that section. I've been reading it, but it must be in a footnote or something.
Yeah.
He actually takes a proposal for Medicare that was developed with Bill Clinton's budget director, Alice Rivlin. That they were the two of them that put it together. So they're so radical that this scholar from the Brookings Institute, who used to be Bill Clinton's budget director, helped him put it together. It's based on ideas that were endorsed by former Democrats like John Breaux and Bob Kerrey, this is a very moderate budget. To think that this is radical shows just how far left the Democratic Party has moved.
It's amazing how controlling the narrative is everything. How do we give us like one specific of the bill where if we're at someone with work and they're like, oh, this budget proposal is so extreme, the Republicans are ridiculous. Can you give us like one thing that we can talk about? Be like, whoa, this isn't that extreme, and we can spell it out for us here.
Sure, just very simple one. He wants to take Medicaid. We'll hear a lot about this. He wants to take Medicaid, put it in the form of a block grant, and send it back to the states to let state governors take that money and find the most efficient way to use it. This is exactly what Bill Clinton did to the cash benefits under welfare. And at that time, they told us it was going to do all these terrible things. The result was welfare rolls went down, poverty went down, child poverty went down, black child poverty went down. It was a huge success. He wants to do the same thing to Medicaid, and we're hearing that it's radical.
So a block grant is, explain what that is. So like California, just here's $1 billion. You guys figure out how you want to give it to people?
Exactly. He's going to look at it and say, we're spending this amount of money in California right now. Instead of us sending it, you send it to us, we send it back to you with a whole bunch of strings and tell you exactly how to spend it. We're just going to give you the money, and you can run the program any way you want with that amount of money.
I can't believe it. That Paul Ryan guy. He's so evil.
He hates poor people.
Yeah, clearly does. Okay, that's a wonderful example, and we'll spread the word about that. Again, it's only 70 pages now, so where does it go from here? This is all sort of like broad stuff? Like, what's the next step?
Yeah, it is actually very broad stuff. You have to understand that his role as budget chairman is he comes out with a broad spending vision of how much money they're going to spend each year. He doesn't say exactly what they're going to spend it on. That's the Appropriations Committee.
Okay.
And so it's this arcanery of Washington, but what will happen is his budget will now, they'll pass that, and if it passes the House, then the Appropriations Committee will decide how you actually turn it into law. How much of that budget goes to education or transportation or agriculture or whatever. That's their job, to sort of divide up the pie. He bakes the pie, and then the Appropriations Committee slices it up.
I dig it. Okay, we've got 20 seconds. You like this? You like his proposal in total?
It's a great start. I wish it had gone farther, but it's the only adult plan in Washington.
Oh, burn! Michael Tanner from CATO. Appreciate you very much.